I'm Chirag and welcome to this video. So guys, in this video, I will take you through how to invoke a Lambda function from another Lambda function which is in VPC. So to get started, let's try to understand how Lambda to Lambda invoke works. So to invoke another Lambda function from one Lambda function, it needs to call the invoke API which basically sits on the internet. So the caller Lambda function should have open outbound access in order to make a call to that invoke API, which means it requires internet access. Okay. So now, while we place the caller Lambda function behind private VPC, it will not have access to the internet. Hence, it will not be able to call another Lambda function or the invoke API. So now to successfully invoke another Lambda function from the Lambda function that is in private VPC, either we can configure net gateway, which basically allows the Lambda function to call the invoke API, but it comes with a high cost. And the another way around is to create the AWS VPC interface endpoint, which will allow that Lambda function to call other services without going through the internet. Okay, so now here we will go with the second option, that is the AWS VPC interface endpoint route. Okay, so now to get started with the implementation, we are going to create two Lambda functions. So navigate to your AWS management console and search for Lambda and click on that. Now once you are there within Lambda management console, click on functions from the left panel and say create function. Give it a name. I will say Lambda in VPC. Okay, and I will select runtime as Python 3.9, and within permission I'm going to select the first option, that is create a new role with basic Lambda permissions, and later on we are going to add other permission that is required for this Lambda function to call another Lambda function. Okay, so let's click on create function. Now here, as you can see, we have successfully created our first Lambda function, which is the caller Lambda function. Okay, now we are going to create another Lambda function. So we will navigate back to Lambda management console, and then we will say create function again. We will say, for example, destination Lambda function. Okay, something like this. And again, runtime would be Python 3.9. Now here again within permission, we will select the very first option, right? That is create a new role with the basic Lambda permission. If required, we will go ahead and add permission, okay? And say create function. Now here we have successfully created both the Lambda function. Now we will go back to our caller Lambda function, that is Lambda in VPC. And here we will click on configuration and click on permission from the left panel and click on this role name, and it will redirect you to the IAM management console. Now here we are going to add few permission that is basically required to call any Lambda function successfully. Now here we will say attach policies, and here we need to attach three policies, that is AWS Lambda role. Now here within this role, it will allow this Lambda function, that is Lambda in VPC, to perform invoke function. That is now it will have the permission to call another Lambda function. Okay, so we are going to check this. Apart from this, we are going to add AWS Lambda execute, and this will provide access to the CloudWatch logs and the S3. Now the another permission that we will need is AWS Lambda VPC, right? That is AWS Lambda VPC access execution rule, right? So we are going to check this as well. So basically, while configuring a VPC for the Lambda function, it will require the permission for describe network interfaces. So that is the reason we need to attach this managed policy, but you can also go ahead and create a custom policy and attach that policy with this IAM role. Okay, so that is kind of more secure way. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we will go on with this AWS Lambda VPC access execution role. Okay, and then we will say attach policy. Now here we have successfully added all the permission that we will need in order to invoke another Lambda function from our caller Lambda function. Okay, so now let me close this. Now as a next step, we will also configure code for this Lambda function. Okay, so here we are going to say import Boto3, and we will also fetch region name. So I will say region underscore name equal to os dot environment basically, followed by AWS underscore region. So this environment variable is set by the system, right? So we don't need to explicitly pass this environment variable manually, okay? And as a next step, we are going to say client equal to boto3.client followed by a service that is going to be our lambda, okay? Because we want to invoke a lambda function from this lambda function, okay? Followed by, we will also pass the region name equal to region name, followed by we will say resp, that is for response. We will say client dot invoke, and then we will say function name that we want to call. Now here in this case, we want to invoke the destination lambda function, correct? And the destination lambda function, let me copy the name of that. So here I will say function name equal to destination lambda function, followed by invocation type. Now if you want to invoke this lambda function asynchronously, okay, then you need to have event as your invocation type, okay? And in case if you want to invoke this lambda function synchronously, then your invocation type would be request response, okay? Something like this. Let me show you. Request response, okay? But in this case, we will invoke that lambda function asynchronously, so that's the reason I'm setting invocation type as event, and followed by payload that we want to pass. Payload equal to, let me define one payload here. So I will say payload equal to some message hello from caller lambda function, something like this, okay? And then payload equal to, we will say json.dumps as a parameter that is going to be our payload, okay? And then we are going to save this and say deploy. Okay, now we have successfully configured or created both the lambda function, and we have also wrote the code to invoke another lambda function. So as a next step, we are going to create a custom VPC so that you can get an idea step by step that how you can go about this. Okay, so search for VPC and click on that and navigate to VPC management console. Okay, now once you are within VPC management console, click on your VPCs from the left panel and say create VPC. Give the VPC name. I will say VPC-test, for example. And then you need to provide IPv4 CIDR block. So I will say 10.0.0.0/16. And within IPv6 CIDR block, we will say no IPv6 CIDR block, and tenancy we will select default, and then we will say create VPC. Now once the VPC is created successfully, click on actions and say edit DNS host names, okay? And then you need to check this enable, okay? So check this and say save changes. So basically DNS hostname and DNS resolution are required settings for private zones, okay? So that's the reason we enabled what was that, DNS hostname, and by default DNS resolution is enabled, okay? You can check that. So if I click on say edit DNS resolution, then you can see it is enabled by default. And now once the VPC is created, we will click on subnets from the left panel, and we are going to create two subnets in different availability zone, okay? So say create subnet, and here within VPC ID we will select the VPC-test, that is the VPC that we have just created, and give the subnet name. I will say private subnet A, something like this, and within availability zone I will select US East 1A, okay? And then you need to provide IPv4 CIDR block. So I will say 10.0.0.0/24, okay? And then we will say create subnet. Now here we have successfully created the first subnet, and then we are going to create another subnet. So again click on create subnet, select the VPC ID, give it a name. I will say private subnet B, and within availability zone I will select US East 1B, and then within IPv4 CIDR block I will say 10.0.1.0/24, okay? And I will say create subnet. Now here we have successfully created two subnets. Now as a next step, we are going to configure this VPC in both the Lambda function. Okay, so let's go to our Lambda in VPC Lambda function. Okay, and then click on configurations, then click on VPC, say edit. Now within VPC, select the VPC that we have just created, and then within subnet we are going to select both the subnet that we have created. Finally, we need to select the security group. So by default, one security group is created. Okay, we can select that. Okay, or we can go ahead and create another security group. So let me do that. So go back to your VPC management console, and under security, click on security groups. Here I will say create security group, give it a name. I will say private VPC access, something like this. Okay, and within VPC, make sure to select the desired VPC, that is VPC-test in my case, and then we will say create security group. It is asking for description, so let me say private VPC, and then we will say create security group. Now within inbound rules, we will say edit inbound rules, and then we are going to add a rule. We will say all TCP, and then within source we will select custom, and then here we will say allow all the traffic from private VPC access security group, right? That is the same security group that we have just created. Okay, and then we will say save changes. Now we can go back to our Lambda function and we can reload this, and then we will have another security group, that is private VPC access. So we are going to select that. We will remove the default security group. Okay, and then finally we will say save. Now it will take some time to update this Lambda function. In the meantime, we will go back to our destination Lambda function, and we will say configuration and click on VPC, say edit, select the VPC ID, select the subnet, and then we will select the security group, say save. It says the provided execution rule does not have permission to call create network interface. Okay, so I think we need to modify the permission. So click on configurations, the permission, click on this IAM role. So here we are going to attach AWS Lambda access. Lambda VPC. Okay, so check this. So earlier I mentioned that I think it's looking for the describe network interface, but it's looking for the permission to create network interface. Okay, so I'm correcting that, and then we will say attach policy. Now let's try again. Let's go back to our Lambda function, click on VPC, say edit, select the VPC, subnets, and finally the security group, and then we will say save. Now again, it will take some time to update this Lambda function within the VPC. So let's wait. So now as you can see, the changes are successful for both the Lambda function. Okay. Now what we will do is we will go to our Lambda in VPC, that is the caller Lambda function, and try to invoke that Lambda function. Okay, here we have successfully configured the code and we want to invoke destination Lambda function. Okay, so we will click on test and say test again, and let's see if it is able to invoke the destination Lambda function or not. So it threw an exception. Let's see. So it says OS is not defined. Let me define that. So I'll say import OS, save it, deploy. Let me reload this because it takes some time to deploy the changes while the Lambda function is in VPC. Now here the update is successful. Let's click on test again and we will say test. Now here again it threw an exception. Let's have a look at the details. So it says the task timeout, right? It's because this function, this invoke function is unable to call or invoke this destination Lambda function, right? Because it is unable to reach to that Lambda function. Okay, so even though both the Lambda function are in the same VPC, the caller Lambda function is unable to invoke the destination Lambda function, correct? So here we will require some sort of interface so that the caller Lambda function is successfully able to call the destination Lambda function, and maybe vice versa. Now if you remember, then I had mentioned there are two ways to achieve this, right? So either we can create a NAT gateway, or either we can create AWS VPC interface endpoint. So as a next step, we are going to create the interface endpoint. So navigate to VPC management console and click on endpoints from the left panel, and then click on create endpoint. Now here within service category, we will select AWS service, and within service name search for Lambda and select this com.amazon AWS US1 Lambda, okay, which is the type interface. And within VPC, select the VPC that we have just created, so that is VPC-test. And then we should be able to select two subnet because we have created two subnets, okay. And within enable DNS name, we are going to enable it, okay, so let it be checked. And then within security group, we are going to select the security group that we have created, that is private VPC, okay. And then within policy, you can define the custom policy if you want to kind of narrow down the permissions, but for the purpose of this tutorial, we will go on with the full access. And then we will say create endpoint. Now it will take some time to get the interface ready, so let's wait. So now as you can see, the interface is available, okay. So it means that we can go ahead and invoke the Lambda in VPC Lambda function and check it out, right? But in case if you are creating the VPC endpoint, right, and its status is changed to available just now, and if you try it out, right, if you try to invoke the Lambda function, then it's going to throw an exception, okay, because these changes will take some time to reflect. So give it a time. In case if you are receiving an exception, try it after some time, okay, it will work. So let's go back to our Lambda in VPC and have a look. So now as you can see, the results are successful, okay. That means this Lambda function is successfully able to call the destination Lambda function, okay. Now let me click on this destination Lambda function and have a look at the logs. So click on monitor and say view logs in CloudWatch. So here, since we have not printed anything, we will only find the execution log, okay. So here as you can see, here we have one log, and that is all about the execution log, okay. So this is how you can invoke the Lambda function, right, in VPCs, okay. So just to verify it, let me say print event. Again, it's going to take some time to reflect this change, so say deploy, and let me reload this. Now let's wait while the Lambda function is being updated. So basically within event, we should be able to find the payload that we are passing from the caller Lambda function, that is Lambda in VPC Lambda function, okay. So we will check that out. So here the Lambda function is updated. Let's go back to Lambda in VPC, that is our caller Lambda function, and say test again. It is successful. And now let's have a look at the logs of the destination Lambda function. Let me reload this. So here we have the latest log. Let me click on that, and as you can see here we have the payload that we have passed from the caller Lambda function, okay. That is a message hello from caller Lambda function. So guys, this is how you can call or make a communication channel between two Lambda function which are in VPC. Now let's have a look at another scenario. Let's remove the VPC configuration from this destination Lambda function and check whether this Lambda in VPC Lambda function is able to call this destination Lambda function or not. Ideally it should be able to call that, but let's verify it, okay. So let me click on configuration and click on VPC from the left panel, say edit, and within VPC we will select none and say save. Give it a time, it will take some time to update this. Now here the Lambda function is updated successfully. As you can see, the VPC configuration has been removed. Now here the case is this caller Lambda function is in VPC and this destination Lambda function is not in VPC, okay. So let's have a look. Let me click on test again. Okay, it's successful. It means the Lambda in VPC is able to call the Lambda function which is not in VPC, okay. So if we look at the logs, then here we have the logs and here we have the payload as well. Okay, so now as the next step, we will check whether this destination Lambda function which is not in VPC is able to invoke the Lambda function in VPC or not. Okay, so what we are going to do is we will go back to our Lambda in VPC function, and then we are going to copy this code, then go back to our destination Lambda function, and we are going to replace this code. Okay, and then we are going to save it, except we will change the payload a little bit. We will say hello from destination lambda function instead of the caller lambda function. And then we also need to check whether this lambda function have permission to perform invoke operation or not. So click on configuration and let's have a look at the permission. So here it is. And now if we look at this resources, right, resource summary, it means this lambda function does not have permission to invoke another lambda function. So in that case, we need to attach that policy. So click on that IAM role, and here we are going to say attach policies, and it should be AWS Lambda role. Okay, this should do because this manage policy allows invoke function action, right? So check this and say attach policy. Now once we have configured or attached this managed policy, we will go back to the destination lambda function. Now here we have the code. Now we can test it out, but before we go ahead and test it out, we need to make sure that this lambda in VPC Lambda function, let's click on code, right? So here what we need to do is we need to comment this line, right? That is the client.invoke. It's because if we call this lambda function from this lambda function, then it's going to call back that destination lambda function and it's going to be a loop, right? And we don't want that to happen. So let's deploy this. And here let me say print event as well. So while the lambda function is being updated, we cannot make another change and deploy it. Okay, so now we can save this and say deploy. Now again it will take some time, and now the lambda function is updated. Now we can go back to the destination lambda function, click on test and say test again. So now as you can see, the invocation is successful. Now we can go back to lambda in VPC, click on monitor, and we can have a look at the logs. So here we have the logs. Let's open it, and we should be able to see the payload that we are passing, that is hello from destination lambda function. It means that the lambda function that is not in VPC is able to call or invoke the lambda function that is in VPC successfully. Okay, so guys, this is how you can invoke another lambda function from a lambda function which is in VPC. And I had also demoed that how we can have both the lambda function in VPC in same VPC basically, and how we can invoke that. And apart from that, I had also showed you that how we can invoke the lambda in VPC from the lambda function which is not in VPC, right? So guys, that's all I wanted to cover in this video. Until that time, if you want me to do tutorial on any use case or service, then please leave them below and I will try my best to come up with the tutorial as soon as possible. And if you have any queries or comments, then again please leave them below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and see you next time.